Section 42 of All About Coffee. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Read by Rochelle Bereni. All About Coffee by William Ukers. Chapter 28, A Short History of Coffee Advertising, Part 1. Early coffee advertising. The first coffee advertisement in 1587 was frank propaganda for the legitimate use of coffee. The first printed advertisement in English, the first newspaper advertisement, early advertisements in colonial America, evolution of advertising, packaged coffee advertising, advertising to the trade, advertising by means of newspapers, magazines, billboards, electric signs, motion pictures, demonstrations, and by samples, advertising for retailers, advertising by government propaganda, the Joint Coffee Trade Publicity Campaign in the United States, coffee advertising, efficiency. In a work of this character, the chapter on advertising must of necessity be in story form. It may tell what has been accomplished in advertising coffee, and perhaps point the way to greater achievement. In so far as possible, the story is supplemented by illustrations, which here tell the story even better than words. Advertising to the trade or the consumer calls for expert advice. There are successful trade journalists who are competent to supply such advertising counsel, and newcomers in the field should consult them first. These men are in the best position to suggest the means for successful accomplishment. They know the men who are best qualified to render assistance for all media and are glad to recommend those who can be most helpful. Jarvis A. Wood has said that advertising is causing another to know, to remember, and to do. If we agree with this excellent definition, then the first coffee advertisers were the early physicians and writers who told their fellows something about the berry and the beverage made from it. Rhazes and Avicenna told the story in Latin and appear to have recommended a coffee decoction as a stomachic as far back as the 10th century. Many other early physicians refer to it. Thus, it was that coffee was solemnly introduced to the consumer as a medicine. The first step made by the berry from the cabinets of the curious, where it was known as an exotic seed, was into the apothecaries' shops, where it was sold and advertised as a drug. Next, the coffee bean was advertised and sold by lemonade vendors, then by the proprietors of the coffee houses and cafes, and finally the coffee merchants sold and advertised the green and roasted bean. Rauwolf told the Germans about it in 1582. Abdul-Qadir wrote his famous argument in favor of the legitimate use of coffee in Arabic about 1587. Alpini carried the news to Italy in 1592. English travelers wrote about the beverage in the 16th and 17th centuries. French Orientalists described it about the same time, and America learned about it long before the green beans were offered for sale in Boston in 1670. Because of its frank propaganda character, Abdul-Qadir's manuscript may rightly be called the earliest advertisement for coffee. The author was a lawyer, theologian, a follower of Mahomet, and as such was eager to convince his contemporaries that coffee drinking was not incompatible with the Prophet's law. Soon the news of the day became the advertising of the morrow. In 1652 appeared the first printed advertisement for coffee in English. It was in the form of a shop bill or handbill, issued by Pasqua Rosé from the First London Coffee House in St. Michael's Alley, Cornhill, and the original is preserved in the British Museum. It is pictured on page 55, chapter 10, and is worthy of close examination. It reads, "The virtue of the coffee drink, first publicly made and sold in England by Pasqua Rosé. The grain or berry called coffee groweth upon little trees only in the deserts of Arabia. It is brought from thence and drunk generally throughout all the Grand Signior's dominions. It is a simple innocent thing composed into a drink by being dried in an oven and ground to powder and boiled up with spring water and about half a pint of it to be drunk, fasting an hour before, and not eating an hour after, and to be taken as hot as possibly can be endured, the which will never fetch the skin off the mouth or raise any blisters by reason of that heat. The Turks drink at meals and other times is usually water, and their diet consists much of fruit, the crudities whereof are very much corrected by this drink. The quality of this drink is cold and dry, and though it be a dryer, yet it neither heats nor inflames more than hot posset. It so closeth the orifice of the stomach, and fortifies the heat within, that it's very good to help digestion, and therefore of great use to be taken about 3 or 4 o'clock afternoon, as well as in the morning. It much quickens the spirits, and makes the heart lightsome. It is good against sore eyes, and the better if you hold your head over it, and take in the steam that way. It suppresseth fumes exceedingly, and therefore good against the headache, and will very much stop any defluxion of rheums that distill from the head upon the stomach, and so prevent and help consumptions and the cough of the lungs. It is excellent to prevent and cure the dropsy, gout, and scurvy. It is known by experience to be better than any other drying drink for people in years, or children that have any running humours upon them, as the king's evil, etc. It is very good to prevent miscarryings in childbearing women. It is a most excellent remedy against the spleen, hypochondriac winds, or the like. It will prevent drowsiness and make one fit for business if one have occasion to watch, and therefore you are not to drink of it after supper unless you intend to be watchful, for it will hinder sleep for 3 or 4 hours. It is observed that in Turkey, where this is generally drunk, that they are not troubled with the stone, gout, dropsy, or scurvy, and that their skins are exceedingly clear and white. It is neither laxative nor restringent. Made and sold in St. Michael's Alley in Cornhill by Pasqua Rosé at the sign of his own head. The noteworthy thing about this advertisement is that in comparison with the best copy of today, it has high merit. For this early advertisement seems to have embodied in it superbly well those qualifications which modern advertising experts agree are essential requirements for success, measured in terms of sales to the consumer. We shall return to it later. The first newspaper advertisement for coffee appeared in the form of a reader in the issue of the Public Advisor, London, for the weeks of Tuesday, May 19th to Tuesday, May 26th, 1657. The Public Advisor was a weekly pamphlet partaking of the nature of a commercial newsletter. The advertisement was sandwiched between a reader advertising a doctor of physic and one for an artificer, the latter being a lady's hairdresser. It was as follows. In Bartholomew Lane, on the back side of the Old Exchange, the drink called coffee, which is a very wholesome and physical drink, having many excellent virtues, closes the orifice of the stomach, fortifies the heat within, helpeth digestion, quickeneth the spirits, maketh the heart lightsome, is good against eyesores, coughs or colds, rheums, consumptions, headache, dropsy, gout, scurvy, king's evil, and many others, is to be sold both in the morning and at 3 of the clock in the afternoon. About the time that Pascal opened the first coffee house in Paris in 1672, the Paris shopkeepers began to advertise coffee by broadsides. A good example is the following, the text of which closely resembles the original by Pasqua Rosé. The most excellent virtue of the berry called coffee. Coffee is a berry which only grows in the desert of Arabia, from whence it is transported into all the dominions of the Grand Signor, which being drunk dries up all the cold and moist humours, disperses the wind, fortifies the liver, eases the dropsy by its purifying quality, 'tis a sovereign medicine against the itch and corruptions of the blood, refreshes the heart and the vital beating thereof. It relieves those that have pains in their stomach and cannot eat. It is good also against the indispositions of the brain, cold, moist, and heavy. The steam which rises out of it is good against the rheums of the eyes and drumming in the ears. 'Tis excellent also against the shortness of the breath, against rheums which trouble the liver and the pains of the spleen. It is an extraordinary ease against the worms. After having eat or drunk too much, nothing is better for those that eat much fruit. The daily use hereof in a little while will manifest the aforesaid effect to those that being indisposed shall use it from time to time. The following are typical London trade advertisements of 1662 and 1663. The first is from the Kingdom's Intelligencer of June 5th, 1662, and reads as follows. At the Exchange Alley from Cornhill into Lumber Street, near the conduit, at the music room belonging to the Palsgrave's Hall, is sold by retail the right coffee powder. Likewise, that termed the Turkey berry, well cleansed at 30d per pound, the East India berry, so called, of the best sorts at 20d per pound, of which at present in divers places there is very bad, which the ignorant for cheapness do buy, and is the chief cause of the now bad coffee drunk in many plays. The Intelligencer for December 21st, 1663 contained the following advertisement. There is a parcel of coffee berry to be put to public sale upon Wednesday the 23rd, instant, at 6 o'clock in the evening, at the Globe Coffee House at the end of St. Bartholomew Lane, over against the North Gate of the Royal Exchange. And if any desire to be further informed, they may repair to Mr. Brigg, public notary at the said Globe Coffee House. Dufour's treatise on the manner of making coffee, tea, and chocolate, published in Lyons 1684, was generally regarded as propaganda for the beverage. And indeed, it proved an excellent advertisement, being quickly translated into English and several other languages. In 1691, we find advertised in the Livre Commode of Paris a portable coffee-making outfit to fit the pocket. The first coffee periodical, The New and Curious Coffee House, was issued at Leipzig by Theophilo Georgi in 1707, being a kind of house organ for what was perhaps the first café clatch. The publisher-proprietor, however, admitted that the idea of making his coffee salon a resort for the literati was obtained from Italy. In Chapter 10, we have described a number of broadsides, handbills, and pamphlets having to do with the introduction of the coffee drink into London between 1652 and 1675. The advertising student would do well to refer to them, because they serve to show how completely the true merits of the beverage were lost sight of by those who urged its more fantastic claims. It is interesting to note, however, that this early copy was of a high order of typographical excellence. Indeed, the display letter used for the word coffee is often like that found in copy in the United States 250 years after. Also, it should be noted that apt illustrations artful aid was first employed in 1674. Again, note this curious contrast. 269 years ago, all the resources of advertising were being laid under contribution to make propaganda for coffee as the great cure for many ailments of which nowadays the enemies of coffee would have us believe coffee is the cause. Those who have possessed themselves of the facts about coffee know that both arguments are equally fantastic. Coffee was mentioned in shopkeepers' announcements appearing in the Boston Newsletter as early as 1714 and in other newspapers of the colonies during the 18th century, usually being offered for sale at retail with strange companions. In 1748, tea, coffee, indigo, nutmegs, sugar, etc. were advertised for sale at a shop in Dock Square, Boston. The following advertisement from the Columbian Sentinel, Boston, April 26, 1794, is typical. Groceries at number 44 Cornhill. Norton and Holyoke respectfully inform their friends and the public that they have for sale at their shop, number 44 Cornhill, formerly the post office, a general assortment of groceries, among which are the following articles: teas, spices, coffee, cotton, indigo, starch, chocolate, raisins, figs, almonds, and olives. West India rum, best French brandy, excellent cherry wine, pure as imported, etc., etc., all which they will sell as low as any store in Boston. Any article not liked will be taken again and the money returned. It appears that the first advertisement dealing with coffee alone was published in the New York Daily Advertiser for February 9, 1790, and this was primarily an advertisement of a wholesale coffee roasting factory rather than an advertisement of coffee per se. This advertisement, and a later one published in London's New York Packet for January 1, 1791, also of a coffee manufactory, are reproduced herewith. Not until packaged coffee began to come into vogue in the 60s was there any change in the stereotyped business card form followed by all dealers in coffee. And even then, the monotony was varied only by inserting the brand name, such as Osborne's Celebrated Prepared Java Coffee, put up only by Louis A. Osborne. Government coffee in tinfoil pound papers put out by Tabor and Place's Rubia Mills. End of section 42. Read by Rochelle Bereni.